The last leg of our trip was Shanghai. We had about an hour bus ride from the airport to get a chance to see the countryside and outskirts of the city on our way in. Shanghai does live up to its reputation of being an international city, as you can see a lot of the European and American influence on some of the architecture. That's the famous Shanghai skyline, and we'd be getting a better view of that later that night. Last stop of our journey is Shanghai. We have a free night, so we're going to go where there's a nice view of the stuff, the Shanghai stuff. Let's go. So I spotted the good stuff. I got some authentic dumplings. I got dumpling brain soup. We're looking to see that skyline, but we don't know where in this big mess we're in. And we have a map, but all the street signs are in Chinese. So we just got direction that it's way back in the direction that we came. Shanghai is the most populated urban city of China with 24 million people. So if you took all of New York and all of Los Angeles and combined it and then doubled that, you'd have about the population of Shanghai. I think this is actually a light crowd since it's only Friday night. Shanghai is known for being one of the fastest growing cities in the world in regards to architecture. None of this skyline or the 20,000 other skyscrapers in the city were here in 1987. Orange juice to go. See how it works. There's no English option. Maybe push the button. You can pay with WhatsApp. Yeah. What's gonna happen? Put on the right, far right. Oh, you got your money back.
Oh well.
First full day in Shanghai. Last full day in China. We had a pretty busy day ahead of us, and our first stop would be the Jade Buddha Temple. It's pretty humid today. The temple's about 100 years old and was built to house two massive jade-carved Buddhas. We weren't allowed to film in the rooms that had the jade Buddhas, but here's a picture of one of them that I found online to show what it looks like. This one weighs about 6,000 pounds. We then headed to the popular skyline spot for a daytime view. This is the same place that we came to last night, but now we get to see it in the day. None of the lights are on. It's super humid and foggy, but it's still really pretty. Old Shanghai, new Shanghai. That used to be the tallest building until that beast came along. The really tall one is the tallest building in China and the second tallest building in the world. Next stop was to a mall. We went to the mall because inside was another one of the government-sponsored markets that I wasn't really excited about seeing, but it ended up being the most impressive one that we went to on the trip. It was a traditional silk embroidery shop. We learned that you can kind of tell how long each piece took to make by looking at the price tag. Every $1,000 is about 2 months worth of work, working about 4 hours a day. So this $8,000 desert scene took about 1 year and 4 months to complete. It took about the same amount of time for this white tiger. Painting's done with a variety of color strings, all intertwined. I love how the shine moves with the light. The shininess moves as you move.
I've always been fascinated with Chinese Kung Fu, so even though this was a class inside of a mall and not monks training on the top of a mountain, it was probably the best that I was gonna get on this trip. During our meal, I accidentally tried a piece of durian pastry, and if you know anything about durian, it's supposed to be horrendous. I think since it wasn't just raw durian, it wasn't absolutely horrible, but it really wasn't very good either. On our way to the next garden that we were going to visit, we heard a familiar tune coming out of one of the little pearl shops. It was an old song called Hey Paula, which just happened to be produced by Sarah's grandfather back in the 60s. The garden we visited was the 400-year-old classical Yuyuan Garden, or Garden of Happiness. The garden is right next to the Fuyulu market, where we finished up our souvenir shopping and had some of our last dumplings of China.
Maybe our last dumplings of Shanghai.
When we were there, we waited for the group at the Starbucks, which was surprisingly even more expensive than the States. The last event of the day would be the evening show of the Shanghai Circus. I'd seen a few acts that were similar to this in the States before, but this was definitely the longest show that I'd seen and had a few genuinely incredible stunts that I'd never seen before. It was a perfect way to end our last night in China, as the next morning we would begin our journey back home.